change your focus slightly, it's very interesting what happens to the thing that you were most pursuing and most focused upon. And perhaps, there's all sorts of words that one could use. Perhaps when you're so desperate for something to work for yourself, you you overdo it and it stops happening. But when you take your foot off the gas and focus on something else, then it's really interesting how that thing can come to you.
There's been a bit of a theme with our guests, and it's this idea of it's good to be hungry for the dream that you're pursuing, but that can also can appear to be desperate when you're too hungry for something. And I think it's finding that balance of actually tutoring yourself before you aim for the dream is probably more.
Yeah, I mean, it's really understandable. I've been acting for 20 years. I was a model for 12 years before that. I know what it's like to go up for appointments. I know what it's like to not have money in my pocket. I know what it's like to be desperate, really want that job, because I know I can do it. There are also many other people that are qualified and good enough to do it. So, all sorts of things come into getting that job. But just by tutoring yourself in life ways, putting importance where it really is due, perhaps you can give yourself a little bit of luck. Because particularly these days, and particularly with what we're all going through really recently, but before Corona, and for some time, it's been a really good and clever thing that if you are somebody who is trying to become an actor or is acting already and getting work occasionally, not getting work, it's really important that you know how to do something else, because you're not always going to be working. You need something else to have as an income provider. So perhaps you've just not got enough time for all the things that you're doing. So that's why you're thinking maybe I've got to narrow things a little. But I don't think it's unwise at all to pursue other things within the industry or not. In fact, I think it's really healthy. People who, for all of us, in fact, who are turning up to do a day's work on a production. It's difficult, isn't it? Because you come in and you've got 5, 6, 8, 10, 12 scenes to do in one day. First of all, you've got to be on it in terms of your dialogue, in terms of your words, of course. And then, perhaps you haven't worked for a little while. So there's that nervousness that's there because obviously in order to be good at anything, you've got to do it and do it and do it and do it. And so if you're doing it piecemeal, which, I've been there, we've all been there, it's tricky to turn up and really be confident. But what you should know that might help with your confidence when you turn up for a day's work or 2 days or whatever it is that you are integral. You haven't got there by chance. You've been chosen by several people. So first of all, know that you have the backing of many people before you've even got there. People that you won't even meet when you're on set. And secondly, in terms of somebody like me who's in a fortunate position I'm not saying I haven't worked for it, but I'm in a fortunate position of having a regular job. People who turn up for a day or two, guest artists, are the lifeblood of shows like the one I work on currently, but they're the lifeblood of any other show that you turn up on, whether it's a two-parter, whether it's a film, whatever it is. So I would say, definitely believe more that you are wanted and that you are very much part of that show. Sometimes you're going to turn up and people aren't that friendly because they've got their head up their arse and they think they're a bit special and all the rest of it. But hopefully, mostly you'll find that you walk on set and you're welcomed and you are made to feel like you deserve to be there. So I haven't just made that up to try and make myself sound nice. That is the case. But like I say, that will not be the opinion of some artists and some directors who have an inflated opinion of themselves.
No, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Because I don't know whether you remember, but the day after I was filming on Doctors, and then I don't know whether I told you, but the very next day I went to London to work on the Peter King drama for BBC, which came out the 25th, a couple of days ago. And it was just like a family. And partly because I know one or two people that were on the set anyway, like I know the director and I knew a couple of the crew members, but it became,
that helped.
Yeah, it does help. Yeah, because you just automatically go, okay, there's a familiar face there, and that's a really nice feeling that you don't feel bombarded with, okay, I need to introduce myself and make it memorable or whatever.
Excuse me.
But yeah, so your way into
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
was
So many years ago, when I was 20, I fell into modelling, and my dad very kindly said, "Look, I'll support you for a year or so if that's what it takes to get you up and running, and then perhaps if it hasn't, then we can look back at education or whatever." And fortunately, it worked well for me, and I continue to do that. And during that time, I built up a few areas of my career which were very strong, which was catwalk and advertising. I was never really a kind of high fashion model, which, of course you want what you don't have. But, I traveled the world, met great people and enjoyed it. But another part of the work that I did a lot of were television commercials. And I loved doing them. I loved the moving camera as opposed to a stills camera in particular. But I also liked the sort of very informal, hierarchical running of a team of people that come together to shoot a commercial. I did a couple of bit parts. I did a bit in Highlander. I was living in Paris for a couple of years and got cast doing a sort of, not spoof, but a sort of James Bond type character in a casino, which again, I really enjoyed. And then I was sitting in a flat, having moved back to London. I was living with a guy who was highly motivated, a real go-getter in life. And I'm sitting there. He said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I've got nothing to do." I was sitting around waiting for a modeling job. And he basically, long story short, gave me the oomph to audition for drama schools. So I auditioned for a bunch, was accepted by Webber Douglas, which doesn't exist anymore. Got swallowed up by Central, and had two very, very, very happy years there. I was 29 when I went, so I was the second oldest in the class. And yeah, those 2 years flew by, really enjoyed it. Had a bit of a wobble at one point thinking, is this what I really want to do? I've given up a lucrative career and I've come to this and I don't even know if I'm any good at it. But I stuck with it and I'm very glad that I did.
Yeah. And so you're now obviously based in Birmingham.
The show is. I live a bit further south, but the show is in Birmingham. Yeah.
Ah, right. So yeah. So you commute, do your work, and then go back. Yeah. Okay. So where are you originally from?
Originally, born in London, but did most of my growing up in a place called Rickmansworth, which is near Watford, which is about 20 miles from London.
Okay, so when you landed Doctors, even because if I'm not mistaken, you landed Doctors and then there was a gap. So
yeah, I was brought in for a 6-week semi-reg role. I think they were sort of testing to see if I was any good and if I could fit into the group as a regular. But initially it was 6 weeks. Then I went away for 6 months and they asked me back for 3 months, which I did. Then they asked me for a year, and then it's been 13 years now. So
yeah. Oh wow. Yeah. Okay. So I'm assuming they don't make you sign a contract longer than a year. Is it a year contract or?
It's a year contract. Yeah. Or bit part thereof. It can be 3 months. It can be 6 months. It can be whatever. But I've just gone for rollover.
Yeah.
Yearly contracts.
And I say this more because I've never really had the opportunity to ask this question to anybody that's been a series regular in a show like this. Do you find, obviously you're incredibly, and I'd say lucky very carefully because I appreciate you have worked very hard to get where you are, but you're very lucky to have this contract. You're very lucky to be part of this engine that means that you are in regular work. Do you feel it's had any, like if there were any negatives attached to that, what would that be? Because we can all sit here and go, wow, this is amazing and it's really exciting and we aspire to get similar contracts, but what do you think are the downfalls of that?
Well, look, so I think I can answer that well by saying that I've had 5 different dressing room partners since I was there. and they've all. So I joined when I was almost 40, and every single roommate I've had has been less than 25, and they've all left. They've all come. They've all learnt their trade. You know, they've done a couple of years, and they've skedaddled because they're at a great age, not the only age to get work as a male actor, or by any means, but they've gone because they've got no responsibilities yet. They've not got a mortgage. They don't have any kids. They've got energy and whatever on their side, and so off they've gone. And some have gone on to bigger, greater things. Some haven't. Whatever. But I got there at 40, and I kept saying in the first couple of years that I was there, I'm going to have to leave soon, otherwise I'm going to get trapped here. And so there's an element of having stayed in this one place that I used to feel trapped in, but I no longer do because, it may not, they may boot me off next year. Who knows? I might do something stupid that they go, right, you're out, or they change their journey. Who knows what could happen? But so that's the one thing that what else might I have done? But then what if? You can't live on that, right? I've got a family, I've got a mortgage, I've got responsibility. So, but also more importantly, they've offered me. Well, I shot a short film when I was about 10 or 12 years ago, and on the back of that, I was offered a block of episodes to direct. So, kind of really not knowing really anything at all, certainly technically, I did this block, and it turned out well. So I've learned another skill. In fact, I've learned many other skills within it. So it might have taken away, in an odd way of saying that, it might have taken away some things that I might otherwise have experienced, but it's given me a load of things that I would never have experienced. So, it's one of those. In terms of playing the same character, even though you're being written for by people who see you in a certain way, I can't speak for other shows that I haven't worked on, but for Doctors, I know that they're very flexible. So you get the words on the page. If you don't feel that your character would say that, you can argue the toss. Or very often we're doing things on the hoof, on set, as we're reading the scene, as we're blocking it. You realize that certain dialogue has to change necessarily. So they're quite free about letting you interpret their words, if you like. I know other shows are a lot stricter and you have to be, word for word. But playing the same character over a period of time is not shackling, if you like. It can be liberating in the sense that once you're somewhere for a while and you feel a more solid sense of your self-worth, confidence comes, and one's ability to interpret a line that you might have said in a certain way a year before, now with all the characters' experiences, you'll say another way, or you'll feel free to play with it a bit more. Right. I don't feel trapped in any way by this playing the same character. I was just talking before about perhaps imagining characters I may well have played in this period, Yeah. But who knows? But then again, I've I've been long periods in my acting career not working. What do you have to have achieved to get in Spotlight? What's the deal? Or is it just a question of pay your money, you get in?
No, it keeps changing. So if I'm referring to the eligibility factor and it's wrong, I apologise. So up to the age of 25, you are eligible. You just have to pay, have an agent, and have a headshot.
You have to have an agent. Okay.
Yeah, you have to have an agent. And anybody above 25 has to have done drama school training or 5 professional acting credits. And that's obviously really tricky if you haven't got an agent who's deliberately going out of their way to find work for you. But also I can't always submit a non-Spotlight registered actor for Spotlight registered work. So even though I have access to Spotlight, it doesn't mean that I can get a non-Spotlight registered actor involved.
Right.
So it's really tough. It's really tough.
But isn't it? But that's so. I suppose, yes, the spotlight is the go-to dictionary, if you like, of actors that producers and directors and so on go to. I mean, I sat when directing, going through with the producer of that block, going through Spotlight to find actors suitable for the roles. I get that it's a go-to place, but that's interesting because it used to be when I first started that in order to act at all, you had to be a member of Equity. Now I don't think that's the case. You can, any one of you guys can get a job on anything, I suppose, if you were lucky enough to meet that person, have that conversation. If you're not able to go through Spotlight,
Right.
So it comes down to that, right? So it's limiting. It's limiting, is what you're saying. Not being Spotlight. Okay.
And I'm not trying to play a violin here, but for those that are from the Northeast will agree with me. We are massively underrepresented and massively unable to tap into the South connections. I mean, it's slightly different, and we're by no means a massive agency. We're still, we're a family-run business. But I already have connections in the industry from my personal connections from when I was growing up and from being an actor, that I've just then turned it and said, oh, by the way, and I've contacted all of the casting directors that I knew and said, I'm now representing emerging talent. Please, can you consider us for even just day player work at this stage to help us create something, a buzz in the Northeast. But things are changing. I'm not pretending that it's still the way it was even 3 years ago. Things have changed, and we are getting a lot more opportunities and a lot more emails coming through saying that they're looking for regional accents, but they have to have a base in London, for example, or whatever the requirements are. So things are changing. I've worked with a lot of really cool directors that have allowed me to play and allowed me the opportunity to really explore the scene. So the most obvious one was a director called René Penavis. He was a Dutch director. We were working on a feature film with Thomas Turgoose, the young lad from This Is England, and Charlie Rothwell Palmer. It was been in loads of wonderful things. And we turned up, I'd learned my lines, and the director said to me, just be careful, because Thomas is like the improvisation king. He said he's definitely going to throw some curveballs, so just be prepared. And as it stands, I really can't wait to see the final piece, because we ended up scrapping the script and totally improvising the whole scene. We just had to get from A to B in order to complete the mission of the scene. And that for me was one of the most liberating jobs I think I've ever done. Terrifying at the same time, because you had to make sure that I was on form. But then I've just finished working on Make Me Famous, which is what I mentioned a little earlier. And the director said to me, like, play around, see what you can come up with. And I was like, great. But then the producer came over and said, look, Reggie Yates is here, the writer. Please, can you stick to the script like gospel? And suddenly the pressure, this whole amount of pressure of getting it right and maybe not being able to play quite as much. I'm just curious, in the 13 years, and I'm talking specifically doctors, and I know that you've done a lot more than just doctors, but I'm just really curious to learn like the relationship between you and the director. I know you said that you can change words here and there, but when do you feel like you've had a good day at the office, as it were?
Well, you know what? I'm going to take this opportunity to bring me back to that, but I'm going to take this opportunity to dispel a myth that some of you may feel when you have been to auditions, or whether you've got a day's work or 2 days or whatever, and you've gone to do that job, and you've seen the director, and you kind of revere the director, and you look up to the director, and you feel like this person knows everything. Well, let me tell you this, having worked on this one job for 13 years, I can tell you that not every director knows everything. Some are very good with actors, and not so hot on the technical side of things. So they rely on their DOP and their camera operators to give them the style of what they're doing, but they're very, very good at working with actors. Others are completely useless at working with actors and are all about the composition of the shot, so the framing of what comes into the shot. So what I'm saying is that I think secretly, and I'm not saying disrespect the director, of course I'm not, or whatever, but I'm just saying don't revere them, don't put them on a pedestal as a god, and don't feel so nervous that that idea of them that you may have makes you feel inhibited, because they'll work with you. They will work. They've hired you. You're there you're there for a reason. They'll work with you. If you feel that you've got an idea that you'd like to go in a different journey with that word or that sentence or that scene, then where they're trying to steer you, then you need to go, I've got an idea. Because all ideas are good. All ideas are good. And you're the person that's got to deliver those lines. So feel that you have a collaboration with your director. And I can't remember what you first asked me a moment ago.
Yeah, no, that was it. You've sort of answered it, I think. But like, what would you class as a good day at the office in regards to, like, you walk out and you go, yes, we collaborated. That was, because you must have some where it's a bit.
In terms of the relationship with the director, or in general?
I'll open it up to in general, but the original question was with the director, but actually that's not important. It's more collectively as like a team. You must have good days and bad days like any other job.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's, I don't worry at all about fluffing lines. I don't worry at all about missing marks, because you can pick it up and you can go again. There's whether you're nervous or whether you just forget or whether you fluff or whatever it is, all of these things can be corrected within seconds. So I don't concern myself with those at all. I suppose I consider it a good day if the schedule has been shot, if you've achieved everything, and if you feel within the time constraints that there always are, whether you've delivered something good. But then, you know what, how can you ever know? Because you haven't seen the rushes. You don't know what they're going to use. You don't know how they're going to edit it. So I think if you feel like you've connected with your other actors, if you've been a listening actor and you've listened not only to the actors, but also to the director, and you've tried to take on board any direction they may be trying to give you, it's really, a lot of it comes down to actually being able to listen, and not just listen, but to actually hear what somebody is saying to you. And then it's up to you to take that and interpret it in your own way. And they'll either come back and say, do you know what, that's not what I meant, but I liked it anyway. Or they'll come back and say, well, actually I meant, could you try and push it a bit further that way, and so on. So it's, I think going back to the beginning of our conversation, Daniel, the pressure that we all feel when we turn up for a day or a couple of days is that we need to get everything right straight away, particularly on something where it is fast moving, like doctors, that, as long as somebody doesn't die in the back of shot, they usually take a take. So there's that big pressure on your shoulders to get everything right. Well, don't worry so much, because although you want to do well, your heart is in the right, all of our hearts are in the right place. Sometimes you muck up. Sometimes you forget a word. Sometimes you don't hit the mark. It's okay. All right. Don't be so hard on yourselves that you build up this internal kind of anxiety, and before you know it, you can't even get anything out of your mouth because you're so worried. And I know that feeling well. I went to do a French-Canadian version of The Three Musketeers, and I joined. It was a film that was moving around the world, and I joined the cast and crew 3 weeks after they'd started in Prague. And so 3 weeks, a lot of people had formed relationships. There were cliques and groups and so on. And I turned up, the new guy, and the first 3 times I attempted to walk into the room in period costume with my big sword on my thingy around my side, I caught the sword belt on the door handle and yanked myself backwards. I mean, once is okay, twice is 3 times. So imagine the pressure. Imagine the pressure I'm feeling at that moment. I had to take myself away. I had to say, "Excuse me, I'm going to the toilet," because my whole body was shaking, thinking, "I can't do this. I just can't do it." And I had to fortunately, I was at that point, I was early 30s. So I was a bit older than, some of you younger ones, and a bit more experienced perhaps, but nonetheless, I had to really calm myself down. And what I've learned now, having been in the industry as long as I have, is that that person who suffered that anxiety in that moment now would not, because I would know that, okay, what have I just done? What's just happened? I forgot my lines, or my belt caught on the door. Fine. Well, what I'll do is I'll open the door a bit more. You get a calmness from experience and time. But what I'm saying to you is that at the beginnings of your careers, if indeed it is, to try and bring a calmness to your work, even if something goes wrong, because it's okay. And you can pick up within seconds. You can start again. It's not like theatre. If you forget your lines, you're kind of screwed. But telly and film and adverts and so on, yes, there's a lot riding on them. There's a lot of money in them. There are pressures and there's expectation. But no one goes through a day not making mistakes. So I guess getting the schedule shot, Daniel. But it's so much more. I mean, it's your living, it's your life, it's your interaction with other human beings. It's not taking the mickey and pulling a sickie or I don't know. It's just, there's so much to what makes a good day. There's so much. I can't really narrow it down, but I just have confidence in yourself and your abilities and what you bring to the party, because no one else will bring what you bring.
I think that leads us on really nicely. Thank you for that, Marc. That was really nice to hear.
Although I'm not equating myself to Ronaldo, the footballer, but you imagine what he does all day, every day. He kicks the ball, heads the ball, chests the ball, he scores goals. He does it all day, every day. And so in that same way, when you are learning lines all day, every day kind of thing, it's just the time it takes to learn it well enough for that time that you're doing it is quick. But when let's say you've got a play and you're trying to learn a big monologue or a big scene or whatever it is, I find a really good way, and I still do it today, but this is something that I happened upon when I was doing a season of rep basically at Pitlochry up in Scotland, is going for a walk. I go for a walk, and as we do if we're sitting at a desk or wherever, you just read the line, and you've got all this beautiful stuff to distract you, but yet you're focusing on your lines, and you just repeat it. And I have found always that my lines go in much more easily than if I'm sitting on the sofa, or if I've kind of got the radio on or the TV's over there. It's a really successful way, has been for me, to learn lines. I think also in it is, sometimes when we get a script, we sort of put it off because we think, I'm never going to learn that, or that's really difficult, or I feel a bit nervous. Hit it head on, get into it, read it. Even if you just read it once and then you put it down again for a while, get into it as soon as you can. Because the more you put it off, I think the more of a barrier and a block we create for ourselves in learning that piece. So the moment you get it, the second that you can sit down with it or walk with it, do it. Cut it down to its base. We human beings love to stereotype. We love to categorize. We love to pigeonhole. And producers and directors and casting directors and all sorts are no different. They like to put us where they think they can understand us. So, for Daniel, I can see, it doesn't matter, before Daniel opens his mouth, I can already pigeonhole him in a certain genre of roles, right? The heavy guy, the doorman, but actually, when you speak to him and you realize how eloquent he is and erudite and so on and so forth, he could play a lot more than that. But just from the spotlight picture, they're going to go heavy guy, doorman, bouncer, fighter, whatever. That's what they're going to think. And they're going to look. So in terms of trying to narrow down what it is, what type of roles you're going to get, I think that's kind of like turning up at a casting, having imagined what they like and trying to force yourself into that narrow perspective of your thinking of what they want from you, which screws you, because how can you or I or anyone ever know what they actually want? So you learn, You learn monologues, whatever it is you do to keep your brain going, to be ready when an appointment does come, that you've got a couple of good monologues that are very different. The first one I'd say, learn something that you think they think from having seen your photo you're going to come out with. So that's your first one, right? If you're lucky enough to get the chance to do your second one, surprise them. Surprise them. Show your range. Show, I can do that, yeah, because I know that that's what you think I'm going to do. But then I'm also going to give you that. Whoa, that's confused us. Now we don't quite know where to put it. But that might, that's what I would do. I wouldn't try to pigeonhole yourself. But then again, I'm saying the opposite. I'm saying, you've got to work out where it is you see yourself fitting in the industry. Okay, well, maybe that's my answer. Work out for yourself where you want to be, how you see yourself fitting in, and then maybe go for those kind of characters from films, learn pieces of theirs from films. So, I mean, if it is that so before I got this regular gig on Doctors, I in the 2 weeks prior to that, I'd gone up for a regular on EastEnders, I think as a doctor, and I'd gone up for a regular on Casualty. So clearly the industry is saying to me, you look like a professional. You look like somebody who, in that vein, a professional person. So I don't know that I picked up on that necessarily. I was just pleased to be getting the auditions and was hoping to snag one of them. I think once you're in the environment of auditions, once, for example, the BBC are casting you for various things, which happened to me years ago. I was going up for this and that and comedies and this and Doctor Who and people like us, all sorts of things. Once you're in that environment, people are looking, people are watching. They're saying, who's this guy? Why does he keep getting pulled in and you get that job? Why did he? Oh, I'll watch it. So it really does come back to what Daniel was talking about. I don't know if you're on Spotlight yet, but it's, do as much as you can, those of you who are not on Spotlight, to get yourself on Spotlight. Because other than that, you've got to, I don't know how you're going to get seen. I don't know how anyone gets seen these days if they're not at least on a platform like Spotlight. I just don't know. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's going to take a bit of luck and hard work on Daniel's part to, bang on doors at places like the BBC, like ITV, independent companies, and say, look, you need to see some of my clients because they're doing great stuff. They're capable of great stuff. However Daniel does that, that's not my side of things. I don't really understand that. But you got to get yourself out there. You got to get yourself out there. And one way to prepare is to get a couple of monologues. And if you've got a couple already, maybe look at two other ones. If you've got two in your locker already, look at two more. Get one classical. Get one contemporary. Learn the backside out of them. This goes for everybody. Learn those pieces so they're back to front, upside down. You can play with them. You can do them this way. You can do them that way. And that way, when the opportunity does come and you get a bit of luck, you've got the job. It's tough. But going back to something we were talking about earlier about, sometimes when you want, and I don't know what your ambition levels are like and your desire and everything, but sometimes when we want something so much, it kind of pushes that thing that we want the most further away. Maybe look at how you're approaching it. Maybe look at how, what are your thoughts about what you're doing? How are you approaching it? How do you walk in the door? Because I know, as somebody who's directed now, barring the most incredible performance I've ever seen, I pretty much know from when the person walks through the door to when they've sat down and how they say hello, that's pretty much the audition for me. If I can see that person just being themselves, be natural enough, I can work with them. If somebody comes in and they're apologizing for having dropped their bag, or they move the chair to sit down and they say sorry. This is a really big thing, actually. This brings me on to one of, it's a pet hate of mine as an actor and as a director. Don't apologize, but stop apologizing unnecessarily. You find so many actors do it. Oh, sorry. And it's like, oh my God, shut up. It just drills a hole in my head because you don't need to do it. You know, if you accidentally knock someone over or mess someone else's lines up for them, sure, sorry. But, you know, I messed up, sorry. But if you fluff your lines, if you get stuck and you get caught and you have to look down, don't apologize, because what it does is it lowers your status. A really, really good bit of advice I was given years ago is when you get a script or a play or whatever it is, go through it. 3 things. Firstly, what your character says about him or herself. Secondly, what others say about you. And thirdly, what you say, what your character says about everybody else. And these are a really, really good way of initially connecting with a character. And so gaining some technical tools about character will help you be natural in the playing of those characters. And it's, you know, a lot of it's about feel. A lot of it's about feel. You take the words off the page, they come into your brain, and you throw them around. What's this character like? Well, first of all, you've been cast as that character, or you've got that audition because somebody or some people think that you look like the person that could play this role. So you're already winning. You've already got a head start because you are one of a handful of people that have been chosen for that audition. So first of all, cling on to that, Georgia. That's the phone. Bear with.
Take your time.
Hello? I'm going to call you back. I'm just going to... I think there is great beauty in simplicity. And the more simple we keep things, the more accessible they are for others. You know, more accessible it is for people watching. We've all seen really busy actors who are kind of, they're just doing something all the time. It's like, calm down, slow down, let me in, sit still. Let me look at you. Let me work out what you're thinking. So don't overthink it, first of all. Those 3 things that I was saying about what you say about yourself, others say about you, and what you say about, that's a really good way in. And yeah, simplicity.